Today, we're diving into the epic 5,000-year history of one of the world's very first superpowers, ancient Egypt. It's an absolutely incredible story of power, godlike ambition, and a single prophecy that would shape the fate of empires for thousands of years. So, let's kick things off with something pretty unexpected. A prophecy made way near the end of Egypt's ancient story. The Prophet Muhammad actually foretold the conquest of Egypt by his followers, but he told them, treat its people well, hinting at this deep, shared history. And that prophecy, it raises a huge question that's going to guide our whole journey today. I mean, why Egypt? What was so special about this one piece of land that everybody wanted a piece of it for thousands of years? Well, to answer that, we've got to go way, way back. All the way back to the dawn of civilization. 5,000 years ago, ultimate power wasn't about gold or armies or anything like that. It was all about the single most important resource on the planet, fresh water. And there was one place on Earth that was just blessed with a crazy abundance of it, all thanks to the world's longest river. You see, the Nile River would flood like clockwork every single year, and when the waters receded, they'd leave behind this incredibly rich black soil. It basically created a farming paradise right in the middle of a massive desert. This gift from the river drew people in from all over, and all that wealth and power got concentrated right there, making Egypt the center of the entire known world. And out of this incredible land, one man stepped up to unite it all, King Narmer. And we know he did it because the proof is literally carved in stone on the Narmer palette, one of the oldest historical documents ever found. It shows his victory, the moment he created the world's first great empire and kicked off the entire pharaonic dynasty. For the next 1,000 years, Egypt was on top of the world, totally supreme. But you know what happens with absolute power, right? It leads to some pretty wild ambition. The pharaohs were just not satisfied with being ordinary kings anymore. So they created a whole new state religion with a really simple but powerful idea. The pharaoh isn't just a ruler, he's a living god. And for the average person, the only way to get to paradise in the afterlife was through total, absolute service to him. It was a genius move for keeping control, but it also sent them down a path totally obsessed with eternity. But this whole living god thing, which came to define their entire culture, it had a catch, a big one. A pharaoh's godhood wasn't guaranteed. Nope, it all depended on one thing. His physical body had to be perfectly preserved, forever. If the body decayed, poof, the divinity was gone. And this belief, it led to one of the most fascinating and, let's be honest, kind of gruesome rituals in history, mummification. It was this chillingly precise process. Surgeons would actually use a hook to pull the brain out through the nose. Then they'd remove all the organs, except for the heart, which they believed was the center of intelligence. The body was soaked in a special salt for 40 days, then filled up, anointed, and wrapped super carefully, all to cheat death itself. But just preserving the body wasn't enough. You had to protect it, right? And this kicked off what was basically a divine arms race. Every new pharaoh tried to one-up the last one, not just with better mummification, but by building bigger, more insane tombs to protect their bodies. And that's how we got the pyramids. The scale of this ambition is it's hard to even wrap your head around. For over 3,800 years, the Great Pyramid of Khufu was the tallest thing humans had ever built. To put its weight into perspective, you would need to stack 12 Burj Khalifas, that's the tallest building in the world right now, just to equal the weight of this one ancient tomb. Unbelievable. But this obsession with the afterlife, it had a very real-world cost. And for the first time in over 1,000 years, you start to see these little cracks appearing in the foundations of this mighty superpower. I mean, think about it. Building these literal mountains of stone took a staggering amount of money, resources, and people. The cost was so huge that it started to drain the empire's treasury, weakening the economy, and leaving Egypt vulnerable in a way it had never, ever been before. And right into this moment of crisis, a young slave boy shows up in an Egyptian market, Prophet Yusuf, who you might know as Joseph. His story is just miraculous. He goes from being a slave to becoming the prime minister of all of Egypt, and his wisdom actually saves the collapsing economy and makes Egypt powerful again. He also brought his family, the Bani Israel, the future Israelites, to live in Egypt, and they thrived there for generations. But centuries later, that peaceful life just gets shattered. A brand new dynasty of pharaohs comes to power, and this one is deeply suspicious of outsiders. This sets the stage for one of the most epic showdowns in all of human history. This new pharaoh enslaves the Bani Israel, putting them through 400 years of just brutal oppression. Then, things get even worse. An astrologer gives the pharaoh this chilling warning. A boy born from the slaves will one day destroy your 3,000-year-old empire. The pharaoh, in a fit of paranoia, gives a horrifying order: kill every single newborn boy among the Bani Israel. But here's where the story takes one of its greatest twists. The very child the pharaoh was hunting, Moses, was miraculously saved. And of all the places he could have ended up, he was raised inside the pharaoh's own palace. You just can't make this stuff up. This, of course, set up a collision course, a direct confrontation with the mighty pharaoh himself, who many identify as Ramses. So after Moses demands freedom for his people and shows them these incredible miracles, the pharaoh finally agrees. And in a single night, a staggering 600,000 people flee Egypt. It's this massive event known as the Exodus. But their freedom didn't last long. Pharaoh Ramses went back on his word, and in a total rage, he chased them with his entire army, trapping them at the edge of the Red Sea. And this is where we hit a really fascinating historical puzzle. The Exodus is a massive event, a cornerstone of the Quran, the Bible, and the Torah. But when you go and look at the official Egyptian records from that time, there's nothing. No mention of Moses, no mention of this huge departure. It's a silence that historians have puzzled over for centuries. But here's what history is clear on. Right after the time of Ramses and the loss of his army, Egypt's golden age comes to a screeching halt. It's over, for good. The superpower goes into a decline it would never recover from. The myth of the pharaoh's godlike power had been totally shattered for the whole world to see. What happened next wasn't some sudden collapse. It was more like a long, slow, 3,000-year fall from grace. The empire that was once unconquerable became a prize, just waiting for the next big power to come and claim it. For centuries, Egypt just got passed from one conqueror to the next. First, Alexander the Great rolls in around 332 BC, then the Roman Empire takes over and they stick around for over 600 years. And then finally, in 641 AD, the armies of the Muslim Caliphate arrive at Egypt's doorstep, ready to take it from the Romans. And with that conquest, the prophecy we started this whole explainer with, the one made by the Prophet Muhammad centuries earlier, was fulfilled. A 5,000-year story, from King Narmer to the God Kings, from the pyramids to the prophets, had finally, at long last, come full circle. The age of the pharaohs was officially over. It really leaves us with one last, deep question to think about. When you look at the whole story, the pharaohs declaring themselves gods, building actual mountains for their tombs, it's a powerful lesson in ambition and pride. And it really makes you wonder, what is the ultimate fate of any empire that's built on that kind of towering hubris?